So today I'm going to be doing my March and April wrap-up. I read a total of 8 books in the 2 months, so I'm really excited about that. And this year has just been a really great reading month. I think I've gotten at least 4 books read in every month, which is nice. So that's where I want to be, at like a book a week. So yeah, let's just get into the first book. So I'll start with the books that I read in March. So the first book that I read was Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. And gosh, I loved this book. It was amazing. It's like everything I've ever wanted in a book, and to be able to see like a character that looks like me in a book is just amazing as well. But I have a full review on this book. I did a Is It Worth the Hype video on this book and the next book that I read. So if you want to know more about my thoughts and feelings, definitely check out that video. It definitely goes into more detail about how I felt at the time, but I'm still in love with this book, and I'm dying for the second one to come out because this book ends on such an amazing cliffhanger, and I'm just like, I need the second book. And the next book I read was Tequila Kingdom by Alexandre Cristo, and I also have a review. It's in the same video that I did the review of Children of Blood and Bone and Is It Worth the Hype? And if you want the short answer, yes. This book I think is not as great as Children of Blood and Bone. I think it does a lot of interesting things, and I know a lot of people have really already enjoyed it. Basically, it's like a dark take on the Little Mermaid story. I would have wished it to go a little bit darker, but I think it does a lot of interesting things with the world, and the story was a pretty good romance. So I definitely think it's worth the hype if you're into fairy tale retellings. So I have my full review of that too, so if you want to check out more details, I will have that video up above in the card down below in the description. The third book that I read in the month of March was Pure Hollywood by Shet. And this is a short story collection of stories that follow different women, and I think a few of them follow some men, but they kind of all are going through these weird times in their lives and are just struggling to kind of figure out their life. And honestly, I don't remember a ton about this book, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to. The writing style was a little different, and it kind of took me out of the stories a lot, and all of the stories are kind of written in the same sporadic style, so it just wasn't really something I was interested in, and I kind of was disappointed in it. I think I would have liked it more had the characters been a little bit more developed. I think she focused so much on the strangeness and the weirdness of the stories and trying to capture the story in a very specific writing style that it kind of lost the actual concepts behind the story and the actual human nature of the story. So I don't think I would really recommend this book to anybody, and especially if you don't enjoy short story collections, I don't think this is a great place to start. It is a little more hard to get into, and I think to really enjoy short story collections, you kind of have to find that collection that really draws you in and keeps you wanting to read it, and unfortunately that just wasn't this book. So I didn't really enjoy it, but I'm glad I got the opportunity to read it. So the last book I read in March was Girls Burn Brighter by Shobha Rao. And this book I received on NetGalley, like most of the books that are in this wrap-up. But I wasn't really sure what to expect with this book. All I kind of knew was that it was about 2 girls that kind of get into this friendship, and one of them goes off to America and the other one is searching for her lost friend. And as I started reading it, I loved the way Shobha Rao kind of describes the setting. It starts off in this small Indian village where the 2 girls grow up with their families, and it just has this really beautiful writing style. And then as you kind of slowly get into the story, it becomes a little bit more darker as you learn that this is a story about 2 women who are in the sex trafficking trade and are looking for each other to find that connection again to long lost friends. Overall, while the story was very sad and very dark at times, I thought it was definitely a story that needed to be told, and it was very beautifully done, and I really enjoyed it. And I think, if you've read the story, you probably know what I'm talking about, but I think a lot of people will have issues with the ending, and I feel the ending does kind of leave it up. It does leave a lot for the reader to kind of figure out on their own. I enjoyed how the story ended. It puts a lot of hope into the story in a way, and I think that this book is definitely worth reading if you're okay with something that's a little more on the depressing side. It's just a very deep and passionate story, and just a lot happens to these girls. So if you're really uncomfortable with rape, abuse, and all that sort of thing, I don't think this book would be something you would want to read. But if you are comfortable, or not comfortable, but if you're okay with reading those types of things, then I think this book is very important to read for any female or male. It's just so powerful, the connection between these two females and what they're willing to do to move their life forward and to stay alive is just very passionate, and I loved it. Shobaral's writing is just beautifully done. I just can't wait to see what else she writes, because I'm just interested in the stories that she has. And so those were all the books I read in March, so let's jump into April. Last month I read 4 books as well, and I was pretty happy with my reading month. There are a few books that I didn't enjoy quite as much, but let's just get into it. So the first book that I read was Sociable by Rebecca Harrington, and I also requested this book on NetGalley. I was super excited about this book. It seemed definitely up my alley. Basically, it follows a young girl living in New York who recently graduated with an English degree and is looking to kind of figure out what her role is with the rise of social media and online marketing, and how she can kind of navigate this world and build a place for herself. This was really interesting to me because I felt really personal connection to this, because I also graduated with a very similar degree, and I'm kind of trying to figure out what I want to do in that role. Do I want to get into something that's social media based? Do I want to do something that's more like, I don't know. I just was really interested to kind of see how this character took this journey. So the book basically follows her as she takes this job at a company called Journalismly, but it's very similar to like a BuzzFeed. She takes this job, and then the story just didn't really grab me, I guess, in a sense. It felt very condescending. All of the characters are very much obsessed with their social media presence, how they are perceived by others, and while I understand that's a big issue about my generation in particular, of how we've kind of adapted to this social media world, but I just didn't really agree that all of the characters were this way. The main character, she doesn't really do anything to grow in this book. She's obsessed with her ex-boyfriend. She takes these same actions. She doesn't really progress at all in her role. She doesn't really do anything job-wise. The story was kind of brought up as like, this is going to be what it's like to work in this job, but the story didn't really talk much about her job at all. And the story mainly focused on her relationship with her boyfriend, and the relationship wasn't good to begin with, so you're not really rooting for them to get back together. It just was not the book for me. I just felt the author really didn't think about what she could have accomplished, because this book has a lot of potential. I could see people saying that this is a satire of what my generation is like, and it also, there's comments about in the description of the book how this is more of a comedy. I didn't find this book funny at all. I didn't find it to be a very meaningful satire. I just did not really like it because all of the characters were this way. There was no growth. There was no looking at the characters from a different perspective. Their perspective is third person, but you do follow the main character very closely. There's no like looking past the main character's actions and seeing what actually is right. It's just basically looking at it through her eyes, and then it just, I just did not like it. It just didn't have any deeper meaning to me, and even if it didn't have a deeper meaning, I would like to enjoy the book at least, and I didn't really enjoy it. So I was pretty disappointed about that book. The next book that I read is Afflictions by Lennox Mccaskill. I did a full review on this book. This is the second book in his I guess it's a series, it's not a trilogy, but it's a really interesting book about superheroes and this fictional city called Meridian, and I really enjoyed it. So if you want to know more about my thoughts on this book, check out my full review. I also read a book called Plant Messiah by Magdalena, and this book I really enjoyed. It kind of gave me the same feelings of Lab Girl by Hope Jahren, but more facts and more focus on the plants rather than a memoir of his experiences and his studies. So I really enjoyed this book. He is a botanist at the Oxford Botanical Gardens, I believe, and he travels around the world helping endangered plants kind of revive and bring them back into their natural habitats. So it's very interesting. He talks a lot about different types of plants and their benefits to the ecosystem and also to humans. He has this really interesting passion with lotus flowers and talks about all the different ways they reproduce, I guess, and it's very interesting. And if you did really enjoy Lab Girl, I definitely think you would enjoy this book, or if you're just more interested in the different complexities of plants and how they thrive and interact with each other, definitely check this book out. It was super interesting. I learned so much more about plants that I just have gained a bigger appreciation for them, and I attribute it all to this book. The next book that I read is actually a poetry collection called Honeybee by Tristan Metier, and I got this book on NetGalley. In return, I got this book on NetGalley. I was hoping to just pick up some more poetry. It's been something I've been kind of wanting to explore this year, and I was kind of disappointed about it. The poetry collection is basically about her time after she was having a secret relationship with a woman, and the female and the woman she was having a relationship was very religious and wasn't really willing to come out about her relationship. So it's kind of these love and heartbreak poems about her relationship and how she's coping after they kind of split and the other girl gets married to a man. So I really wanted to check it out. I was really interested in poetry and the own voices aspect of this poetry collection. I just was really interested in that and the relationship, so I wanted to pick it up. Unfortunately, I didn't really enjoy the poems as much. They were very surface level, in my opinion. I was disappointed that they all followed the same note, and I understand that she was going through a lot at the time, and it's definitely a breakup of that magnitude is definitely something serious, because you're also trying to explore who you are, what kind of people you're interested in intimately, and that sort of thing. And I understand that, but I just felt like the poems were a little almost too personal. It felt like kind of poems that you would write to yourself to kind of cope with these emotions, but not something that you would actually show to the world. It looked like these poems were definitely written in the heat of her emotions, and they didn't really offer anything other than what she was feeling at the time. And not that I don't appreciate that, but I would have liked to see more reflection on how she's doing now and how she feels looking back at those memories and looking back at how sad she was about those issues, about the breakup. But it kind of lacked that perspective. It really kind of just focused on the time during her breakup and how she was feeling in that exact moment. It was eye-opening in that sense, but I would have liked to see a little bit more depth in the poetry. So I didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to, but yeah, that just happens, I guess. So the last book, I actually ended up reading 5 books in April, and the last book that I read was I Am Still Here, Black Dignity in a World Made for Whiteness by Austin Channing Brown. This story follows the author's life growing up as an African-American female with the name Austin, and how she dealt with her work life, her school life, and dealing with being black in those predominantly white worlds. And I was very intrigued by this book. It's very interesting because when I first picked up the book, I got this book on Night Galley, but when I first was looking at it, I had also assumed that she was a male when I first found this book and saw the author's name. I first assumed that she was a male, and then I looked more into it and I was like, oh, she's a female. So it was interesting also having come with those preconceived notions and just seeing how she kind of dealt with that. There's a part in the book where she explains, you know, going to the library and being accused of stealing someone else's library card because the librarian didn't believe that her name was Austin. Though it didn't really talk about anything new about race in America that I don't already know, it was interesting seeing it from her perspective, and I did kind of connect with her because we kind of had a similar upbringing. She grew up going to school in a predominantly white school and also lived in a predominantly white neighborhood, which was very similar to my upbringing. So I really connected with this book on a personal level. If you're interested more about race and how racism still kind of occurs today in the workplace and in how Black people apply for jobs and all of that, I think this book is a great place to start. I think the text is very approachable. I think this book is more written toward a white audience rather than a Black audience. But I definitely think that this book is definitely worth checking out. It's very short, and I definitely will be buying a physical copy when this book comes out. And I believe that's in May 15th, I believe. So yeah, it's definitely coming out soon. And if you really are interested in these topics, I definitely think you should check it out. So I just really enjoyed this book, and I hope you guys want to check it out as well. So that ends this big, massive wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys are reading in April or if any of these books piqued your interest. And I will see you guys very soon with my TBR challenge video. So I'll let you know what I'm going to be reading in May. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Bye!